And right effort, according to Buddhism, really being lazy is seen as a very bad thing. If we don't use our time in a productive kind of way, then we're wasting our life, and we have a very short life, and then before we know it, we have squandered our life away, and then so it's very important to really make the best of our time and not be complacent. And right mindfulness and right concentration, they are the last two. And right mindfulness means training in our mind in such a way that we learn to notice what is going on in terms of our life experiences, so that we learn what to forget and what to remember. I know it is not explained that way often, but that is the meaning of mindfulness. By the way, in Buddhism, the word is smriti or tempa in Tibetan. Actually, literally, the word means remembrance. So remembering to forget is also mentioned. So remembering to forget and remembering not to forget and to retain. Both things are accomplished through practice of mindfulness. Yesterday we were talking about how to renounce certain aspects of ourselves, to free ourselves from them. So that is a way of learning how to forget, how to let go about certain things. And then we also talked about, accumulation and things like that. So that is an exercise in remembrance, not forgetting, sort of cherishing, nurturing those things that actually support us and are helpful. Is a exercise in remembrance. It's through remembrance we we learn to make them become more part of ourselves. And right concentration comes from practice of mindfulness. So that obviously means we learn how to deal with our distractions, so that we become more and more skillful in terms of how we concentrate. So from being able to concentrate when by not trying to not taking notice of too many things, just focusing on what one needs to focus on, to being able to concentrate even when there are distractions. Concentration is a practice, obviously. So as one becomes better at it, then one is able to maintain concentration in varieties of situations. So at the beginning, one might be able to practice concentration only in a certain environment or in a certain situation, like sitting on the cushion doing meditation or something like that. But then gradually, one might be able to concentrate in all kinds of situations. Reading, driving, talking to people, in varieties of situations like that. One learns to focus. One is there. As we know, often we find that very difficult. When we're at work or even when we're talking to somebody, we're not really. It's very difficult to actually concentrate fully in terms of what the person is saying or whatever. I mean, really, you learn to concentrate. You learn to concentrate in varieties of situations, from a very sort of feeble beginning to a more established way. So, in other words, it's also a form of mind training. So, so the mind, when the mind becomes habituated to operate in a certain way, then it automatically functions in that way. So if concentration becomes sort of like a part of habit, mental habit, then it becomes easy. As it is said in the Mahayana teachings, there's nothing that doesn't become easier through practice. I mention this because, for one thing, as you know, this is what Buddha said we should do, in terms of how to deal with our situation, our current situation, and how we should deal with our suffering. What is the antidote? So as we can see, Buddha says we need to actually deal with the body, speech, and mind, all three. All three, and we need to bring about change on all three different levels. Even though Buddhism emphasizes the mind, just simply working on the mind in itself is not sufficient. We have to work on our speech, and we have to work on our body. All these, all these three aspects have to be worked on. And so, so in light of that, then we can see later on, when Buddhism developed, we can see how, like Buddhist yoga and Buddhist medicine and so forth would have, sort of have developed as an extension of practices associated with the with working with the body, speech, and mind. So in other words, even though the Buddha himself may not have, talked about these things, nevertheless, because the Buddha said we need to work on three: body, speech, and mind, all three. Then later on, when Mahayana Buddhism started to incorporate, different vocal exercises and physical exercises and so on, then we can see how that may then relate to working with the body, speech, and mind. And the elaborate development of meditational exercises involving, extensive visualization and things of that kind. So anyway, I'm not going to sort of go on about that. So the Buddha said, we suffer because of craving. And craving arises due to ignorance. Ignorance is there because we don't understand things properly. And so because we don't understand things properly, that's why craving is there. But what does that mean? What did Buddha mean by we don't understand things as they are? Well, basically, what it, at the beginning, as far as the Buddha was, as far as what Buddha had to say, it was quite simple. I mean, he said things do not have any real enduring substance. Things are subject to change. That was one of his main message. So therefore, craving is harmful because things are subject to change. That was his view. Because things don't last, because things change, then to have strong craving leads to experience of suffering, because due to craving, clinginess, graspiness, excessive attachment, all of these things follow, and so this, because of this, our mind gets disturbed. But this got sort of elaborated upon later on, and the Buddha himself sort of spoke about it in a way about these things, because the Buddha said, we don't understand how things work, we don't understand how we work, and because of that, we get confused. We get confused. So, how do we not understand ourselves? As I said yesterday, Buddha did not think our lack of self-understanding has anything to do with not understanding our true self or anything like that. What he thought was that our lack of understanding has to do with not understanding how our different parts of ourselves actually are interconnected and how they function in relationship to each other. So, not understanding how our thoughts, emotions, feelings, and so on, and our physicality, all these things are interconnected. That gives us a wrong sort of picture of what we are, what we are like. So our lack of self-understanding then has more to do with not understanding those relationships than not understanding our self in the sense of some hidden self. It's not like we are sort of fixated on some kind of false or some kind of empirical or conventional notion of the self, if you like, because we have lost sight of our true self or something like that. And so our job is to retrieve the true self and try to move away from or detach ourselves from the false self. The Buddha didn't think in those terms. He thought that what we don't understand is what we already experiencing in relation to ourselves. So by understanding more about what we already experience, we gain self-knowledge through that. How our thoughts, for example, are impacting on our emotions, and how our emotions and feelings are all tied up together, and how our physical states also relate to our mental states and so on. This is why even in meditation, we focus our mind on breathing and things like that. So according to the Buddha, depending on our mental state, our physical response is there also. Whether the body is relaxed or rigid or whatever, our postures and all of these things, and our physical sort of level of health, all of these things are interrelated according to the Buddha. So by understanding ourselves in relation to those things will then make us understand ourselves better. So the same thing applies in relation to the world, in relation to what we experience in terms of the world. We think, there's something called tables, chairs, houses, mountains, and so on. The Buddha said, to get wisdom, first to develop wisdom, we need to analyze. Buddha said to understand anything, any object, to understand how certain things work. To use a modern example, if you want to see how a watch works, then you open it up and then you take the parts out, and then you see how the different parts fit together, and then you may be able to work out how a watch works. In a similar fashion, with everything that we perceive are called dharmas according to Buddhism, according to the Buddha. Even the teachings are called dharmas because through understanding the dharmas, we understand Buddha's teachings. Because the Buddha's teachings is what describes the dharmas. So the different elements, mental and physical elements, are called dharmas. So to gain insight into things, we have to understand the interconnected nature of the dharmas, how different physical and mental entities actually work together.